Hello. Thank you so much for joining this amazing conversation that I'm going to be having, and it's a much needed one within our queer community. I want to thank We Create Space for hosting this conversation in such a safe way. Me, My Body, and I is a conversation around body image and how do we navigate that within the queer community. I'm going to be speaking to three amazing guests who are going to be telling us about their stories, how they navigate body image and self acceptance, and giving us some suggestions on how we can find self acceptance.
Okay, so hello everyone, I'm Freddie Lewis. My pronouns are he, him. I identify as a trans man-ish, trans masculine person. Um, my relationship with body image has kind of gone through many stages. Pre-T, I struggled with kind of finding gender expression that worked for me and that functioned. And then when I came out, I struggled with kind of like conforming to masculine ideals and presenting in a way that felt true to me or in a way that felt like I had to. Um, Still a work in progress, still kind of figuring out what works for me and how to have a good relationship with my body, but definitely starting to get there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Freddie. River, lovely to meet you. Tell us more about you and your story.
Hello, everyone. My name's River Solis. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a non-binary autistic singer-songwriter based in South London. In terms of my relationship with my body, it's been a very, very long journey. Starting back in school, I was really struggling with being bullied. So I was bullied for like multiple things. So I had like really bad acne. I had like chunky thighs, thunder thighs, they would say. I had yellow teeth, hairy arms, and it was just all these little things were picking away at my, insecurities and my self-confidence. So eventually I got my teeth whitened and I went on some really intense medication for my acne. And it was just so temporary, that feeling of like, oh, well, now on the outside, I feel amazing. But then it lasted like a few seconds. And then my self-confidence plummeted again. And then my body image issues were contributing to addiction. So I turned to alcohol and drugs to just feel confident around people again. And then, yeah, it just took me a really long time to be confident with myself. So as soon as I actually became sober, I started to like reground myself, recenter myself, and be comfortable in my body and love my body. And yeah, and then I shaved my head, and then that was sort of the start of my new journey and my new self.
Thank you so much for your honesty there, River. Like such, I really relate to some of the things that you've just spoken about. Yassine, lovely to meet you. Tell us more about yourself.
Hey, yeah, nice to meet you and all of you. So my name is Yassine, pronouns she, her. I would identify myself as a queer, gender non-conforming woman. Sometimes people tell me I'm a bit like butch lesbian, which I kind of, I'm kind of working my way around how I feel about that. But people, because like I feel like it's a label that people put on me, not necessarily something that I would define myself as. And that I think stems from, well, no, actually, and also I'm a diversity inclusion specialist, but also I'm like a facilitator, writer, mentor, occasional model, which is a bit random, but I think that fits into this conversation a little bit as well. But yeah, so like my journey around like my self-acceptance and in my own body and things like that, it is still definitely ongoing. It's been something that I think has impacted me definitely from when I was very, very young. I have always been like a bit of a tomboy, was never in like dresses and all that kind of stuff. And I think it first started to manifest as something deeply like that felt inherently negative and inherently wrong because of well, like my relationship with my mother, and like she was quite a like glamorous very like feminine woman, and I just felt like I was the complete opposite. And so I felt like in some ways that I was like a disappointment based on like my just like in my existence. And that's obviously something quite difficult to navigate or to work through when you're that young and you don't really kind of understand what those feelings are. And so you just internalize that. And I think I did that quite a lot and have done that until very, very recently. But I think initially it manifested itself in like a rebellion of the idea of like being feminine in any kind of way. And so definitely throughout my teenage years, it was all about like being as like masculine as possible, because I was never going to be like a, you know, traditional femme woman. So it was almost done in a way that was like out of spite. And I think as I've gotten a bit older, I've been doing a lot of work, especially over the last year, actually, like being in lockdown and not having to kind of face, I guess, like the external pressures of existing in society, and society's like perceptions of you. I've been doing a lot of work around like authenticity and my own identity and how I relate to that and what that actually means to me. And definitely coming to terms with like my body and actually caring for my body and loving my body. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. Definitely still on the journey and learning to like unpack and unpick and also just question where a lot of these feelings come from.
I completely agree. I think it's, you know, like you just said, it's a journey, and I think we all go through that journey. I think maybe in the last year or so with the pandemic, you know, that's allowed us to kind of really reflect and look at ourselves in a very different way. And thank you so much to all of you for sharing your stories, you know, so honestly in this space. And just to introduce myself, my name's AJ, my pronouns are he and him. I identify as AKA South Asian, and I'm kind of fairly new to the scene, I guess, maybe like 2-3 years. And kind of my journey has been kind of up and down in terms of roller coasters, trying to find where I fit in. I think when I first came into the community, all I was presented with was this image of what a gay man should be, which is very kind of white cis male. And I obviously don't really, I clearly don't identify with that. And trying to find that community was really kind of difficult. And I think when you're presented with a body image type, you know, in media and social media, it can be quite challenging and quite taxing on the person to think, why do I not look like that? Well, I never fit in. And I guess my journey has been, I guess in the last year, lockdown has really kind of taught me to really kind of love myself. And like River, I shaved my head as well. And I found that so powerful. And I don't know if anyone's ever seen Napoli Ever After, but there's a scene in there where the woman shaves her hair because she says attributes so much of her wealth and success to her hair. And once she shaved it off, she was just like, I'm just me, you know. There was this kind of layer of herself that she just shed it off. And I feel like I had my Britney 06 moment last year with shaving my head and having this kind of sense of relief and thinking, you know, this is who I am and I don't need to fit in anywhere because I'm accepting who I am as an individual. And I think I have kind of struggled with kind of weight overall, and that's obviously attributed to kind of health problems that I've had to kind of revisit my kind of health. I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes, and if I didn't make any lifestyle changes, I'll become type 2 diabetic, which led to, I guess, a domino effect of becoming a kind of fitness freak. And so I'm just like in the gym 3 times a week and boxing all the time. And I think even with that kind of body image of this kind of masculine idea, when I'm actually not very masculine as an individual, and kind of being in these masculine spaces have been kind of a playground, I guess, and kind of exploring all of that. So I would like to kick off with our very first question. So this is to Yassine. In today's society, what does body positive mean to you?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. I think I've actually not really engaged with like the world or the movement of body positivity as much as maybe people would expect. I think for me, it's obviously it's movement about like self-acceptance and just learning to you know, love your body for what it is. Yeah, I think it's just been quite an interest, like sorry, I'm just going to start that bit again. So I think for me, the idea of like body positivity is, it is just about coming to terms with with your body, and how your body moves through the world, moves through society, and how you've been treated because of that. But actually, it's about reclaiming that a little bit and understanding that the problem doesn't lie with you, it lies with this external perception of you. And I think that's quite a positive, an important element of this conversation around it, because it is a little bit beyond just, you know, feeling comfortable in your own body, but it's recognizing the ways in which we are systemically the way like we are systemically like told throughout our life, throughout our existences, that certain bodies are acceptable, certain bodies aren't, and what fits into the norm. So it really is about, like, for me, definitely this journey of like self-acceptance and just starting to feel comfortable in myself, but not only in terms of like being like, I'm a big girl, I always have been since I hit puberty, and but learning to understand like actually the ways in which my body is shaped and I've been consistently told is like a negative thing because I'm fat. It's like actually not an issue with me. Like, my body is a certain way because actually, like, I'm a Black woman from like of African descent. Like, there's like, my body was never meant to fit into the ideal of like what kind of Western society deems to be the appropriate body type. So that's kind of been like a little bit of my personal relationship to it. But I just also think that like the ways in which the movement in a wider sense is being talked about now, and it's being expanded to be much more than just about like larger bodies. It is about all kinds of bodies, and I think that's quite an important element. But I think also with that comes a certain level of understanding your own privileges and how different bodies are viewed in different ways in society, and how we can like move and shift these ideas around what like ideal body types and things are together. But that takes a certain amount of like considering your own positions and what rights and like access has been afforded to you because you might fit into an ideal. And so that's something that I'm kind of learning to unpack a little bit as well, because like in my own body, in many ways, I felt very alienated from this idea of like what, ideal body types are. But actually, in many ways, I also still have a lot of privilege. And like there's kind of an interesting battle that goes on around that, especially when you are somebody who's like maybe like a lot of people would consider to be a very marginalized person in many areas of my identity. But actually, I also like I've found a lot of power in acknowledging my privileges in certain ways, and then that has then led to for me a lot of power in just like relating to my body and learning to love it and learning to care for it and learning to accept that like the good elements of it and the fact that I have it and that it's mine and that it's a beautiful positive thing. So yeah, it's been I think when you're trying to have these conversations in the context of like a wider movement, I think it gets very difficult for me, and I kind of start to feel like I'm maybe not engaging with things in the right way. And so I've just had to really personalize that to myself and then think about what it actually means to me, that term of like body positivity.
I think that's so important. I think we all go through individual journeys, and our journeys are very unique. And like you said, we had to look at this movement and really kind of put our kind of experiences to it and kind of see how that kind of fits with us in a wider concept. So thank you so much, Yassine, for sharing that. River, you touched upon expectations when you was talking about your journey with your body. So within the queer community, what do you think are the most common expectations that we put on ourselves in relation to how we look?
I think something that I've noticed is that we have like society's beauty standards. They still affect the queer community. I think when I was coming out and discovering this amazing community, there is still a lot of policing that goes on within those spaces. Recently, I don't know how much I can say about it because of these certain things, but I did a shoot for a brand. It was a queer brand, and they came back to me and like we loved the photos. Me, the photographer, stylist, they came back to me and said that they didn't want any shots with me and my armpit hair. They didn't want any shots showing any belly rolls, and they wanted like more photoshopping and stuff. And it was just really quite shocking for me because I specifically choose to work with brands that I would expect at least to have more like inclusive beliefs. And so that for me like took me back a bit because I realized actually even within these spaces that are meant to be sort of like more inclusive, safe spaces, we still impose standards and expectations of beauty. And it's just a bit disappointing sometimes because we think, these spaces are going to be just celebrating and embracing, everything that's unique about us and all our, so-called flaws. We're all amazing, but in these spaces, it can be not as inclusive as we think. And I think like even queer identities are still under that patriarchal male gaze. And especially with body hair, me and the photographer involved in that shoot, we've now started a project to empower people to like love their body hair, and we're going to do a big project and a big photo shoot. But I also think there is that fear of not looking queer enough in these spaces. On the flip side of what I've just said, I think we come into these spaces and suddenly you have to look a certain way to fit into a certain box, to fit in a certain letter of the alphabet mafia. You know, there isn't anything that allows us to just be us. There are still boxes, there's still pigeonholing. And I think I saw something on Instagram the other day about trans women don't owe you femininity, trans men don't owe you masculinity, non-binary people don't owe you androgyny. And yet I still feel like there is one way to look non-binary. And if you don't fit that, then you're a bit lost. And like, you've got to find somewhere to fit in rather than just be who you are and be embraced in this space. So yeah, I think in terms of expectations with body image, and it comes down to gender identity versus gender expression. And I think we confuse the two, but your identity and who you are, and then how you express yourself, whether that's the way you interact with your body, whether you shave your hair, or, you know, how you look, whether you wax your legs, anything like that, it's just completely missing the point. It's who you are, and how you express yourself is a very different thing. And I think we need to progress within our communities and learn to accept exactly who we are and not the way we express ourselves, because that's beside the point. We need to just embrace each other and love each other no matter how we look.
That's so powerful. Honestly, I can end with that note because it's so powerful, and I think that's a really important message that we need to get across to any of the viewers or anyone who's watching this, is that, you know, just be you. And I think it is quite challenging to steer away from societal expectations. There's a lot of work that we have to do as individuals to unpack that before we get to that space. And I think I'm going to be asking that really important question afterwards. But thank you so much, River, for sharing all of that. I think that's really powerful. Obviously, we talk about barriers within the queer community, within society in general, when it comes to body image. And Freddie, what are the barriers, you know, societal structures or systems or pressures, do you think currently surround body image as a trans man?
So this one's really interesting because there's like so many like layers coming in on it, and there's also the understanding that actually trans men, especially white trans men, quite often can hold the same privileges as like white cis men, depending on whether we assimilate to like cis appearance. I prefer that to passing, because passing implies that there's failing. But like the main like outer layer is like the experience that all men have, which is pressure to conform to like masculine ideals and like be strong, be tall, which a lot of trans men sometimes can't be. Be unemotional, be just horrid, I don't know. And there's quite a lot of pressure to conform to those. I definitely felt that when I first came out, was like, okay, short back and sides, grey clothes, straight cut jeans, fit in, don't draw attention to myself, hood up, shoulders forward, like all of this stuff. There's also like a lot of pressure that's then specific to trans masculinity and not just masculinity, which is like, you should go on hormone replacement therapy, you should go on testosterone, you should go on normal dose testosterone, because some people choose to go on low dose. You should go on the higher dose because then you'll get a beard quicker. Beard, good. And then there's like that sort of like pressure from surrounding the trans masculine community of like, we understand you if you assimilate cisgender masculinity, that makes sense. And then like other trans men will gatekeep each other about that as well, which is like really quite upsetting to see, because it's like we're literally going through the same thing. And then like the expectation to have top surgery as well, like you should have top surgery. It's like, what if a trans man is comfortable with his chest? Good on him. Like and then even like another layer in to have certain top surgery results is like one that I actually personally really struggled with. When I first had top surgery, I was quite a lot heavier than I was now, and it meant that my results looked a certain way, and I would sort of, within the trans masculine community, they were regarded as bad results, which like you internalize and you're like, my chest is wrong. My chest that my grandparents very fortunately helped me to save up to pay for years and years is wrong. And like, that's a lot to deal with when you're 19 years old and it's meant to be the most exciting thing ever. And then that internalization then leads to loads of like I should be's. Oh, my chest should be flatter, my body should be like thinner, or my body should be more broad shouldered and more muscular. And there's so many like layers of both externally implied and like self-inflicted pressure. And then additionally, like as a bisexual trans man, there's like the pressures from gay spaces to, like AJ, you touched on that earlier, of like you should look like this, you should be absolutely ripped, or you should be larger and be hairy, and you can't like, there's no like leeway on that. And all of this kind of like is really hard to not internalize and to then constantly put onto yourself. I'm still in the process of like unpeeling the layers of this. Like I've got a lot better at like I like wearing skirts, more feminine clothing. I have a much healthier relationship with my body in terms of like exercising and stuff to like look after myself for my mental health and stuff. But like there's a lot of layers, and just like Yassine said as well, also acknowledging my privilege in that I kind of do look like what you would expect a trans man to look like. Like I'm like able-bodied and slim build and white and quite masculine presenting most of the time. If I choose to, I can pass or I can assimilate cisgender masculinity. So like I have a lot of privilege combined with all of these like external pressures. It's a lot. There's a lot going on.
I mean, I don't want to say, Freddie, that was so much like information. I felt that for me, that was a learning experience as well, learning from your experiences. I think it's really powerful. And thank you for being so honest with sharing that. And I think what you said was quite true, is like, within, the queer community, what we tend to do, or what we kind of, when we kind of first come into the scene, is that we try to kind of pigeonhole ourselves into a tribe, and then you kind of like, you are presented with what an individual from this tribe should look like. And I remember kind of, in probably the last year or so, where I have maybe put a bit more muscle, but I'm also quite a hairy individual, is that I would get presented with, oh, you're giving me daddy vibes. And then there's this kind of like this masculine kind of very top energy that is presented with that, and that's completely different from who I am as an individual. And it's been quite challenging to kind of manage expectations. I'm not sure if that's the right thing to say in this space, but it's been quite difficult to kind of, when you're dating or whatever, or you're having relationships with individuals and they have this perception of you, which is completely different. It's having those conversations and saying, yes, I'm presenting myself this way, but I'm really not. And I think that definitely does play into a lot of that. And, like you've mentioned, Yassine, before, as there's a lot of kind of intersectionalities that are kind of crossing over when we're kind of exploring our identities. So how do your other intersectional identities, race, religion, cultural backgrounds, gender, etc., interact with your own relationship with your body?
So people are always, like my entire life, been trying to tell me how I should be and like who I am based on, their perceptions of me from the different like identities that I embody. But also kind of feel like they've always been telling me how I don't measure up to the expectations around these different things. So I was always told that I was like a bad Black person because I listened to like indie music and rock and stuff and dressed in a certain way. I was, a bad woman because I dressed in like more masculine presenting clothing and things like that, and in a more like maybe masculine presenting manner. I, am also like, as a like bigger Black woman, like I'm kind of yeah, so far away from this ideal of like what womanhood should be and things like that. And as a like, so it's kind of interesting. I'm technically like, I am an immigrant. Like I came here when I was 12, but I've been here for so long that I think a lot of people find that very like a jarring idea. And I kind of came and I left Africa when I was relatively young. And so I did like, I have like my memories and stuff there. And I did go back occasionally, like quite regularly for a period of time, but I still also feel very like alienated from that in many ways, but also like I don't fit in here. And then so like that combined with this idea that like every element of like my body and who I am and in how I, you know, kind of present to the world is wrong in some way, made me feel very alienated from like my African heritage, from any ideas around like womanhood and like how I might find my place in that. Around like even just being Black in this country, like I'm still kind of going to I go into Black spaces and I'm always a bit kind of cautious or ready for people to reject me because of like being visibly queer. And or then going into kind of queer spaces and then usually predominantly, you know, white queer spaces and being one of a few Black people, definitely one of a few like larger people, or and even like one of a few kind of like masculine presenting people in a lot of in these spaces sometimes. And that's been always kind of like, yeah, so not ever being able to find a space that is for me, that is accepting of me in all the different ways that I am. It always feels like I'm trying to or having to minimize certain elements of myself, of my presentation, of like trying to I guess like make other people comfortable with my existence at the expense of myself. And you know, sometimes that would be like wearing really dark baggy clothing, so I felt like I was almost trying to disappear and trying to like not draw attention to myself, or playing into this character of being like, you know, the larger than life like fat girl who's like funny and charming, but like no one's really going to be attracted to you in that, and like or find you desirable in a way, but you're really great and you know, lovely and fun and all that, so we love having you around. So like playing into all these ideas in order to try and get other people to accept me, and you know, definitely at the expense of myself, at the expense of like my image of myself and my understanding of myself, but then also really like internalized everything to say that like if people don't love me and value me as I am, and I always have to keep changing elements of myself, it must be because there's something inherently wrong with me and wrong with these different parts of myself. And so yeah, it's been, I think, and it's only very recently, I think, that I've started to really unpack the ways in which that has not only been connected to like how I view my own body and things like that, but literally that sense of like tying it all into actually you're a bad person because of these things. And yeah, it's been a, like I keep saying, like definitely a bit of a journey around that of unlearning just the ways in which those things entwine together and impacted not just how I move through the world and things, but like literally how I felt about myself as a human being. So it's quite deep, and it all goes like, I literally feel like in this conversation and being able to have this conversation in this space is one of the first times I'm really reflecting on it in this way, and just how everything was so entwined. And yeah, that like lasting impact that, you know, literally anything I do now, I have to like consciously be like, are you doing this for you? Are you comfortable? Are you happy in your own body? Are you presenting yourself in the way that you want to be seen, not in the ways that you expect, that other people expect to see you? And like, yeah, so it's a constant unlearning and battling, but at the same time, I just feel a lot happier in myself now as well. So yeah, absolutely worth it. But yeah, there's a lot going on, especially with these different things and these conversations coming to the fore as well in like more like mainstream ways as well. So it's quite good to see other people talking about it and other people presenting there's like similar struggles, and being able to see that I'm not alone in that. But also, yeah, it's kind of really just starting to unpick how drastically these things have impacted me.
Definitely. Like we all keep saying, it is a journey, it is a process, and you know, there isn't really ever an end goal, I guess. It's a constant thing. It's a constant conversation that you're having with ourselves, with yourselves, and like you said, it's always checking in and seeing, am I feeling right? Does this feel right for me? Do I feel confident with who I am right now? And then doing the work afterwards to better reflect your emotions and the way you're kind of feeling at that moment in time. And I think it comes to, you know, this idea of what's how to have a better relationship with your body. And River, you spoke about some of the things that you did to feel better about it, to feel more confident in your body. And then when you found it, you found that maybe this isn't right for me. And it was a constant kind of research and development from your end to find a healthy relationship with your body. And it's quite an interesting question, but how do you define a healthy relationship to your body?
So, like you were saying, there were so many steps I took when I was growing up of like almost like externally like correcting myself, trying to like conform and fit into what was conventionally attractive, acceptable, and fit in with these societal norms. And then every time I changed something about my appearance, it was just a fleeting moment of like confidence and like boosted my self-esteem. And then I began to realize that actually I was my own worst critic. It was just the thoughts going around in my head, judging myself, being like, oh, what are they going to think about this like outfit? What are they going to think about this? And I was like, who is they? Who are these people that I'm making up in my head that are judging me all the time? I think it comes also from trauma, like from being bullied or from being treated badly, whether by friends, partners, family, whoever. You kind of start to create these own voices within your own brain. You just have these like people in your head. And so I started to actually do the inner work, that inner child work, sort of figuring out what I needed. And it sort of led me down this more like spiritual path, I guess, of just reconnecting with who I am and what I need as well. And I think it's really important to remember, like, your mind, your soul, your body, it's all connected. And like if one is out of balance, it all sort of goes off kilter. So for me, it was like, what I need to do is improve like how I feel about myself through like getting better mental health support, going to therapy, because then confidence and security within yourself comes from getting help. And I think it took me a long time to realize that. And I just thought, I've just got to change how I look to feel like I belong. And it's actually, you have to get this sense of belonging to yourself. And that was a really long journey for me. And I think, like everyone's been saying, it is still a journey. Like there are days when I'll look in the mirror and I'm just like, ugh, I hate it. You hate what you see. And it's really hard because, I'll tell my friends, yeah, I'm like, I love my body, I love my belly, I love my armpit hair, all of this. And I do it to try and encourage people to love themselves. But you can't change like how you feel. Like, it comes down to like what you eat as well, the fuel you put in your body. Like if I have like a massive takeaway, the next morning I feel really sluggish, and then that affects my mental health. And then I look in the mirror and then I'm like, oh, I need to put makeup on, I look horrendous, and it's these like negative cycles. So as soon as you realize that everything is interlinked, that you need to look after your mind, your soul, your body, it will start to like balance out. And I think that took me a long time to realize. I thought it was just fix what's on the outside and then I'll feel better. But yeah, I think also going on exercise, like Freddie was talking about, for me, I've had like a very difficult relationship with exercising because I either become very obsessive very quickly or I don't do anything at all. There's no like in between. So during the pandemic, I learned how to have fun doing exercise rather than just doing like, sets and things like that. So I bought a mini trampoline for my room, which was the best thing I've ever bought. So I'll do little workouts on my trampoline. And then I bought some hula hoops, which you can sort of just see here. So I'll hula hoop as well. And bringing like fun and like freedom back into exercising has been a massive thing for me, because I don't like when things are really like controlled. I like to have like freedom of movement, and my body is like, it's all about fun and telling my brain that actually like I'm having a good time. I'm not just in the gym stressing out about all these cis straight guys looking at me. So yeah, it's all about bringing that back in. And also one thing I did want to mention is masturbation. Don't know if we're allowed to talk about this, but I think it's very important, because as a survivor myself, I think learning to love your body in a sexual way is so important, because when dating as well, like if you feel rubbish about yourself, that reflects when you're dating, and then you think, oh, no one will ever love me, and people say, you know, got to love yourself first, and I think that's true, but also physically you have to learn to love yourself. So I think, you know, that's a massive stress buster as well, and then that goes into the whole mind, body, soul balance. You know, it's all intertwined, but I think just learning to love yourself in all the ways possible. So, you know, get help if you can, get the support you need, masturbate, eat the right things that make you feel good, and have fun when you exercise. Do some hulaing, you know, bounce on a trampoline. It's great fun.
Thanks, Rue. I feel like that could be a t-shirt. I think We Create Space to make that. It could be like, love yourself, masturbate, live your best life. That's all we need. That's the slogan of our lives. So thank you so much, River. And I think what was so important for me, what I took from what you just said, was we think of our journeys as being very individual and something that we have to do ourselves, but not necessarily, you know, reach out and seek help. Like you mentioned, you've gone through counseling, therapy, and you found other activities that kind of helped you kind of go through that journey. There are kind of tough, rough periods that we have to go through, that maybe we can't unpack ourselves, and we just need someone around us or someone just to talk to really help, you know, dive in a bit deeper. And it's, you know, things that I've kind of really kind of like resonate with you as well, because like when I lost a load of weight last year, but where I've always kind of perceived my body as one kind of body size for so long, losing that weight and then looking in the mirror and thinking, why do I still see myself as this certain weight? And I didn't realize that, you know, phantom fat is a real thing. And it took my brain to kind of a while to train itself to see myself in a better way. And that's when I kind of realized that, you know, this does take a while. This is a process that takes a bit longer. It doesn't happen overnight. Yes, you could do it with your body, but with your mind, it takes a bit longer. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And Freddie, you know, we talk about self-acceptance quite a lot when it comes to body image. So where are you now with self-acceptance, and how do you put it into practice?
So I think self-acceptance for me is like is a journey, is our like buzz sentence of this thing, but it is. I think the one thing that I've learned quite like very recently, I'm talking like the last few months, is that no matter like where your body is physically, like whatever's looking you in the mirror, you will find something that you won't like. I don't know, it's part of the human condition. I've gone from pre-T, where I was like very unhappy with how I looked. I lost quite a lot of weight. I've become physically more healthy. I have become emotionally and mentally, psychologically a lot more healthy. Every time I like level up in myself, there's still something that I'll look in the mirror and be like, no, none of that. Or like a habit I have that'll be like, no, none of that. So my kind of takeaway from that is that like, you will never get to a place where you just look in the mirror and you're like, absolutely 100%, always completely perfect, couldn't better it, nothing I want to change. So you might as well just like love yourself unconditionally from the start of it, when you look in the mirror and you're like, well, that's me. That's the body that I take through the world. That's the body that gets me to the shops. That's the body that makes me sleep at night or whenever I choose to sleep. That's the body that sits me with my friends to watch a film. That's the body that breathes. And the one thing I like actually find myself thinking about quite a lot, it's a very specific tip, but I think about my ear and like how inside my ear there are so many tiny little systems all the time doing these things. There's like liquids that are there just to make sure we know which way we're facing. And there are like tiny bones interlinked to make us receive vibrations as sound and to communicate with people and to like make sure we don't feel nauseous from unbalancedness and like all these things happening. Our bodies are doing that all the time. Like, give them a break. If we have a little bit of something somewhere we don't want it to be, or not enough of something somewhere we want it to be, that our bodies are literally doing amazing things. And I think self-acceptance is about understanding your body as like in some degree neutral and like just as like your tool. It's like your physical manifestation in this world. Like, just it is you, and just walk it about or move it about whichever way you do, and like that's it. It's the one that's there. So just enjoy it as much as you can.
I love that here example. I feel like I'm going to steal that, buddy. If you don't mind, I'm going to steal that when I'm having conversations with other people. I'm like, here, guys. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I, just want to kind of start wrapping up on this conversation with a question to you all, which is, as role models and queer leaders in your own right, what suggestions can you give to others who want to invite more self-love and acceptance in their daily lives? So I'm just gonna pick someone at random to kind of kick it off. So Yassine, would you like to kick off?
Yeah, sure. I still kind of always feel a bit like weird when people refer to me as a role model, or even a queer leader, because it just feels like, there's expectations around that I'm like, oh, am I embodying that? And that definitely links to, I think, yeah, like my self-image and self-esteem issues relating to that. And like this, like I was talking about, this constant sense of not being enough, not being good enough. And I think it's a very powerful thing for even like with that term, for example, for me to be able just to sit with it for a second and go, no, that's fine. This is who you are. This is the work that you do. And, actually, again, like, however other people might define you, you can take that term and define it however you want. And it's the same way that I approach, or trying to approach, my body and how I relate and engage with it. And to reiterate a lot of what's been said, that sense of like we're doing the inner child work and spiritual work, and just taking a moment to think about where all these negative perceptions have come from and think about the impact that they've had, and just spending some time doing that. And it's in a constant like kind of way, but I don't think it needs to be as heavy as it sounds. I think it can just be like a checking in with yourself, and learning to, for me, it's like learning to listen to my body and learning to respect it and respect what it is telling me, when I've spent so much time trying to run away from it or hide it or being ashamed of it. It's actually literally like finding that relationship with my body now. And so kind of similar to what's been said by both Freddie and River around like taking care of it, appreciating it, and that being like a nurturing relationship that hasn't come naturally, but it's almost in learning to love myself. I'm able to love other people better. I'm able to hear other people better, and it's so like even like that thing about when you're looking in the mirror, like you're not necessarily going to ever be 100% happy with everything going on, but actually now I'm looking at myself, and rather than saying, oh, I hate this about myself, because like, is that coming from an external pressure, or because somebody else has told me that I should dislike this thing about myself, or is it because I don't feel aligned with my body? Is it because I've done something that like has actively made my body unhappy, and what now do I need to do to make it happy? And that can be, I also think it's quite important to spend some time feeling a bit uncomfortable about things sometimes. So like if I have done something, like if I went out the weekend and did a lot of drinking, and now might feel a bit hungover this week or whatever, I don't want to sit down and just beat myself up over that fact and be like, why do I do this to myself all the time? Blah, blah, blah. I actually just want to say, like, I made that choice. It was fine. I maybe haven't honored my body as much as I could have done in that, but okay, what do I need to do now to move past that? And it's fine. It's not like indicative of me being a horrible person because I made a choice to do that and now feel rough because of it. It's like, I think things are constantly flowing, and it's important to remember that as well. But also in that flow, just taking some time to constantly like reflect and listen, and just make sure that you're touching in with yourself. And yeah, that can be in a very literal masturbatory sense as well. I want to reiterate that point. I think that's really, really great. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Yassine. River.
I just wanted to reiterate what Yassine said about checking in with yourself and really listening to your body, because that's something I've learned that, like, especially struggling with like what I eat, I have a very complicated relationship with food. And just when you're hungry, like when your stomach's growling, eat something, when your mouth is dry, drink some water. When you're tired, go have a nap if you can. I think it's so easy just to like get caught up in this capitalist idea of, you know, the grind and hustle culture, and just stop and breathe, and like, you know, even just something as simple as breathing, that recenters you and connects you with your body. I would also say affirmations are a big thing for me. Saying things out loud, because you can get so stuck in those negative thought patterns within your brain. So, you know, wake up, and if you can, it sounds stupid, but the more we practice it, the easier it is to just sit up, you know, when you wake up in bed, and be like, I love myself, I love my body, I love my belly, I love my armpit hair, or whatever parts of you may feel insecure about or people may judge you for. And just get practicing saying these things out loud, because then they will become more truthful within those thoughts within your head, and you'll start getting those thoughts when you wake up being like, oh, you know, I love these parts of myself, and I'm going to honor the way I feel today. And I think before you try to change your body, change your mind. I think that's the best advice I can give to anyone who's struggling with body image issues, is the root of your issues will always be coming from your mind and your thoughts. So do reach out if you can, get support. There are plenty of places to get support, whether it's specifically for body image issues or just general mental health. But yeah, I think it's just all about balance for me. I think that's the key word, is just finding balance between your mind, your soul, and your body.
Definitely balance, keyword there, right there. Thank you so much, River. And Freddie?
I mean, so there's not much I can add. I think these two people have actually just nailed that. The one thing I do want to add is that try not to compare yourself to other people. It's so easy. There's so, like, because we're in contact with so many people, even Corona and that, we, on our phones, on everything, like in 100 years ago, people would only be in contact with like a max of 100 people. It'd be like the people at school, the people at the church, the people down the road. That would be it. We see hundreds of people and so many possibilities for things that we're not. And I think be grateful for the things you're not, because they're actually what makes you who you are. Like, I'm not tall, that's what makes me short. Like, you know, and like that's a gift, because I will never bump into things on my head, and I can wear heels, and I will never tower over anyone and make them feel scared. Not that that should be a bad thing, but my point is that, yeah, you are you, and you shouldn't compare yourself to other people, because they are simply not you, and you might never be as muscular or as tall or as small or as anything as them, and that's fine. That's what makes you who you are. And yeah, to summarize, I guess, get a tiny trampoline, masturbate, love yourself, affirmations, good night.
I love that. The t-shirt that needs to be made. Thanks, Freddie, for summing that up. And I think the one thing that I just kind of wanted to leave with is that surround yourself with people who love you. And I think that's really helped me as an individual. I've grown up in a very South Asian environment where colorism is such a thing, having these kind of gender expectations is such a thing. And that has kind of played on the way I've kind of questioned myself as an individual. But surrounding myself with, you know, your chosen family or your friends or family who respect you for who you are and just love you for who you are can be really empowering, and just kind of reinforms or reaffirms the things that you're happy with, that you are okay with. So yes, surround yourself with all these amazing people like I have this morning, been surrounded by amazing people, talking about amazing things and sharing their experiences so honestly and openly. So I really hope that, you know, some of our stories have resonated with you, and hope some of the advice that we've given you and suggestions that we've given you can really support your kind of journey to self-acceptance and self-love around your body image. But yeah, thank you once again for everyone for talking today, and hopefully we can catch up soon. Thanks, guys.